In this module, we'll discuss whether or not the inner circle plays a major role in the ELT profession. The centrality which is given to the inner circle, or the importance which is given to the native speakers in ELT, is based on certain SLA assumptions. One of these assumptions is that the target language is learned in a mother tongue context, which means whenever you want to learn a second language, you can only learn it in a context where only the target language is available. We can look at it in this way, that if somebody wants to learn English, that individual has to be transported to an English speaking country so that the person is provided with a complete English language context. The second assumption that SLA makes is the ultimate goal of any second language learning is the attainment of native-like proficiency, which again is a little unrealistic kind of a goal because we know that English is being taught and learned all around the world in non-native contexts and by non-native teachers. These assumptions of SLA then make it important, in fact, make it imperative for the learners to have a native English speaking teacher. So this is the third assumption that SLA makes, that the target language should be taught by a native speaker of that language. This model of SLA, which gives so much importance to the context, knowledge, and user of native language, this needs a correspondent ELT methodology. So it has to have a methodology which provides the learners with the opportunities to use English in a complete target language context, and is designed in such a way that it ensures the attainment of native-like proficiency at the end, and of course makes provision for native English speaking teachers. So such methodology, such a theory of SLA, along with such a methodology, is developed and then transported to outer circle countries. But we can see how unrealistic these assumptions and the methodology which accompanies these assumptions will be. So in most of these contexts, in most of the contexts of English language learning around the world, all these assumptions prove inappropriate because English teaching and learning takes place through non-native English speaking teachers and in contexts where native-like proficiency is not a requirement either. Let's take a look at the assumed conditions of SLA and the real conditions of SLA. The assumed condition of SLA is that English can be taught only in a native English speaking context, whereas the reality is that it is being taught and learned in non-native contexts. Of course, for example, if we look at Pakistan, are we learning English in Pakistan in a native English context or in a non-native English context? Obviously in a non-native English context, and we are not doing a bad job. Similarly, the target, the ultimate goal of SLA, the assumed condition is that the ultimate goal is native-like proficiency, whereas in reality, A, people do not really need to attain native-like proficiency. B, it is also difficult when this teaching learning is taking place in a non-native context through a non-native English language teacher whose language will itself have the influence of the local languages. Thirdly, we also see that the SLA assumptions are based on the notion that the learners need to be assimilated with the native culture, with the English culture, whereas we see that there is no such need for the English language learners in the outer and expanding circle countries in fact, many of these learners who do speak English proficiently will never need to use English with native English speakers, and what to speak of actually going to a native English speaking context. So, there's no need to be assimilated or to learn the strategies or strive for assimilation to the English language culture. Then the importance or the necessity of a native English teacher is also just a myth. Um, there has been research in this area, and it has shown that it's not necessary for learning English to have native teachers or for learning any second language. So, research findings do not support the need for a native English teacher for teaching or learning English. This assumption that native English teachers are better able to teach English or make the ideal or the best English language teachers has also been questioned by many scholars around the world. This myth, in fact, is again a strategy to give some authority, in fact, undue authority to native English speaking teachers and the mother tongue English speakers in the ELT world. So, this seems just like an excuse to give more importance to native English speakers in the ELT world. And it gives native speakers a lot of control over the spread of English in the 21st century. If we believe that only native speakers can become good teachers, which subsequently would assume that only they can become good syllabus designers and only they can develop right kinds of methodologies, all these assumptions will give undue advantage to native English speakers and will also give them a lot of control over the spread of English, which means they will then propagate their own variety of English, and in this way they will control the spread of English in the 21st century.